Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I'm your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by our co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. We've got some rain around here, and I think it's goofing with our technology a little bit. And we were talking just before we got started here how that change of weather often brings with it a change of health conditions and all that stuff. So I'm really glad to be healthy and able to be joined by a special guest today.
Yeah, when in doubt, blame it on the weather, of course. Yeah, we have a special guest today. My friend Brian Alsop is joining us today. Brian is a solo practitioner down in Franklin, Indiana, which is in Johnson County, Indiana, about 45 minutes south of Indianapolis. I've known Brian for over 10 years now. We've worked together on some cases down at the juvenile court in Johnson County. And I wanted to invite him on the podcast and kind of have him talk to us about his experience with being a solo practitioner. So, Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Usually when I get called special, it's only in derogatory terms. So Brian's extra special.
Well, you are our special guest. Take that for what it is.
I appreciate that. Thank you. First time ever on a podcast. So I'm super excited, fellas.
Well, we're going to go nationwide. We're going to go viral today, Brian. So pressure's on. Pressure's on.
Well, I'm glad I look good. So
yeah,
That's right.
For sure.
Well, and maybe this is a great time to give the disclaimer that nothing you hear today is, legal advice, and the facts of your situation may vary. So contact a lawyer directly.
Yeah.
What you hear from us today will be just a conversation about, our experience in starting and building a law practice, which is pretty awesome. So, Brian, we're really excited to just have that conversation with you and hear a little bit of your story. So if you would, maybe just start off by telling us a little bit about your background and where you practice now.
Great. I'd love to. Yeah. So I was born in Cincinnati. And when I was about 5, my parents were divorced. My mom moved over to a small town in southeastern Indiana, famous small town in southeastern Indiana called Milan. It's, of course, famous for the 1954 basketball state championship, and it's got a lot of history. It's great. It was a great town to grow up in. Loved it. From there, I graduated from high school in 1997, went to Franklin College, small college in Franklin, Indiana. Loved my time there. Loved it so much I went for 5 years. And then I ended up over at the University of Dayton for 2 years, came back to IU Indianapolis for my last year, and I've been practicing law since 2006. I started as corporate counsel for a place in Indianapolis, doing some general in-house work, a lot of collections work. And then in 2012, July 1st of 2012, I took the step of leaving all of that security behind and hanging a shingle. So that's the fight that I've been having since July 1st, 2012.
Well, I think that's a great point to kind of pick it up and pick up the story. What led you to that decision to hang the shingle and to go out on your own?
Yeah, I was getting tired of the work that I was doing. I mean, you talk about things that lack reward. I felt like the job that I was doing was without any sort of reward. No, I'm not disparaging people who do that type of work. I had always, since the time I was in law school, wanted to do criminal defense work. I found that to be an interesting area of the law, a diverse area of the law, rather than doing proceeding supplemental work and finding out where everybody's hiding their money as I'm trying to collect it from them or whatever the case might be. I would say probably in 2010, I had made the decision that I no longer wanted to do that. I decided to, and I ran for Franklin City Court judge. And so that was really a tremendous experience of mine. I was out. I knocked. I felt like I knocked on every single door in the city of Franklin, at least that were registered to vote and in the voter vault. And so that was really great. And through that campaign, I met a lot of really great people in Franklin. There were 3 lawyers who ran for that. Kim Van Valer, who won. She had been a Superior Court judge in Johnson County for a number of years. She won. A good friend of mine named Mike Auger. He got the silver medal, and I got the bronze. So that was good. At least I was on the podium, as they say.
Right, out of 3.
So it was after that, and then I had a lot of momentum. I met a lot of great people when I was out. Knocking on doors, talking to folks. I had a lot of energy, and I just felt like, well, hey, things are going well. I knew a guy down here by the name of Andrew Baldwin. He owned a building. He had office space. Started talking to him a little bit about, hey, can I come down and rent an office from you? Got that ball rolling. As a matter of fact, I would say it was probably January of 2012. I talked to my boss, and he said that they would be supportive of me leaving. We hired a new lawyer who would transition and take over for me. I've never been one, and will never be somebody that leaves anybody hanging. And when you're the only attorney for a business, a 2-week notice just ain't going to cut it. So it was a several month process getting the new guy trained, who's terrific. He's actually still there. His name's Garrett Lowe, really great guy. And so I started that process. And my office that I got to rent was the attic. Very good. I shared it, I think, with a possum and a family of what do you call baby possums, possumettes? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that they were up there with me. So that's how I got started, was in the attic at 150 North Main Street, Franklin, Indiana, of the building here. But I brought with me a little bit of business from my old job, which paid me a little bit. It was enough to pay my rent, so to speak. And then, there's not a lot in my life that has been more frightening than that step of leaving the security of a paycheck, a pretty good paycheck, really. And I knew when I left, I knew that it was going to take time, probably years, before I made the income that I was making when I left. Best decision I ever made, though. I came down here to Johnson County, started working. Listen, I know that this is not a Johnson County podcast, but I'm going to shout out to my people in Johnson County. There cannot possibly be, no disrespect to anybody else, there cannot possibly be a better bar than the Johnson County bar. We all get along really well. For the most part, everybody wants to help everybody else out. So that's what I walked into. Of course, I came in knowing some big players in the county like Mike Auger and Andy Baldwin. I got to make introductions because I had just run for judge. So I'd already kind of known some people, looking for support, which didn't go my way, but that's all right. And, got in with some of the judges. The judges started giving me some conflict work. I started getting appointed on some CHINS cases, Children in Need of Services cases, out in the Johnson County Juvenile Court. And of course, as you meet lawyers, here's one of the things that'll happen, right? When you're the new guy in town and the phone rings and you're like, oh, this case sounds terrible. I'm going to have you call this guy. Okay. He's new and he's hungry and he's ready to take your work. So then I got that kind of work. And you build a practice off of it. You really do. Those are the kind of cases now that I refer out to other young guys. The people like, I don't really want to handle this kind of work anymore. And it took a little while, but now I can be very selective in the kind of cases that I accept. I primarily limit myself strictly to criminal defense. I don't want to say I specialize in that or anything like that, because I don't, but that's the vast majority of my practice. I'd say 90+% of my practice is criminal defense. So focusing on that, I know the prosecutors, I talk to the prosecutors, and I'm able to do I think, a good job for my people.
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Brian. That's pretty amazing, and a lot there, really. I think we could take any one of those segments of your story and just talk about it and how important it is to starting a practice. But just the idea of running for office, I think, is really interesting to me. And I think that's one thing that Thunberg says in the book, How to Start and Build a Law Practice, is maybe you run for office, and if you do that, you'll make some contacts. And I haven't run for office or anything like that. It wasn't my path to opening up a law practice, but I found it interesting that that's the way that you kind of made connections in the place where you eventually would start your law practice.
Yeah, and that was, I think you mentioned a book that I actually bought and read before going out on my own, How to Start and Build Your Law Practice. A blue white and blue book.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't I don't know that I have a copy of it on my shelf, but I did read that, and it was good, and that one of the really great things about that book is it gets into so many nuances of like talking about things that you don't think about, is like what am I going to do about a copy machine? Now I don't remember specifically that I decided to run for that office because of that book. I ran for that actually because I thought, well, nobody else was running for it, so I'll hop in. And at the time, I was the only candidate. But the long time city court judge that we had was retiring, so I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It worked
Yeah.
out. I didn't
Yeah.
win, but it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many, Thomas, like you say, avenues that your story, Brian, gives us a glimpse into. And a couple things that really stuck out to me is one, just making those connections
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
the ability to get known in the community, either as a lawyer or as someone who is starting a practice and getting your name out there, to having people around you who are supporting you and willing to help. And that seems to be a very consistent theme that we see as we talk to different lawyers who have started out. The success of the solo is often dependent on the community in which they live and the bar association that they're connected with, because that is a lifeblood for lawyers. And what a neat thing to be able to now pass that along when you get in a case that isn't in your practice area and you're busy enough to say, you know what, I'm going to focus over here and I can hand this off to somebody I just met who's starting and building their practice. What then, you've been doing this a number of years now. What do you think is one of the contributing factors to your ongoing caseload and that continuity of the practice?
So I think one of the things that I did very early on the recommendation of, as I've mentioned it before, and he's always going to be somebody that I mention as being very instrumental. I never worked for him. Andrew Baldwin, you know, to say that he was a mentor, I don't know that he would have taken that mantle on and said, "Yeah, I'm Brian's mentor." That man's meant a lot to me. He's been a lot to my practice. He was so much tremendous help in the beginning, giving me cases and things of that nature, giving me advice, getting with him and renting the office space off of him and learning and watching and going and watching him do things helped me develop, because when I came out of law school and got a job as an in-house counsel, I was the only one. So I didn't really even know how to be a lawyer, quite frankly. And it took me a while to figure it out. And it took me a while to figure out stylistically, how I was going to be. And so one of the early pieces of advice that Andy Baldwin had given me, we talked about this thing called jail mail. And jail mail is basically, some people did it on their own. You scour the newspapers to see who's been arrested and with their addresses on it. And you send them a letter that says, "Hey, I understand you've been arrested." Well, I managed to hook up very early with a company out of Columbus, Ohio, who was doing that. That was their service. That's what they offered. And I built my practice in very large based on that, sending out mail to people who've been arrested or accused of crimes. And I spend a lot of money on that every year, and that's fine. I do. I draw it back many folds over. But a willingness to spend money early on, and almost to the sacrifice of putting the money in your family's at home finances, is important. So I did that, and I took on that additional, I guess, risk of spending a bunch of money every month. It's a few $100s a week, and $1,000 is a lot of money a month to put out the door. At least, especially when you're just building your practice. So that's been something, and I do those to this day. I could probably let those go and still be completely successful, but I've started and really built my practice on those. I'm gonna keep them going. Because I think that's still a really good way um, to get your name out to folks. So that's one thing. And then how I continue to build it. One is off of those letters still. A lot of it's off of word of mouth. And nothing you do as a lawyer, in my humble opinion, uh, is better than building a strong reputation. And I feel like I've built a strong reputation. I mean, I hope I have. I hope when the doors are closed and other lawyers talk about me, that they say that I tried to do a good job for my clients. I hope that my clients, when they talk about the lawyer that they had, they don't just say, my lawyer did this, that, or the other. The reason why, they referred me over to a friend. One of the things I like to tell my clients is when my representation is ended, and I say it in the nicest way possible and almost jokingly, but there is some truth to it. Hey, it was great to work with you. It's great to help you, and I hope I never. But I mean that in the nicest way possible. I do, because when I only do criminal defense, the only time somebody's ever going to be calling me back is if they got into more trouble or probation violation or something like that. And I don't want to hear from them again. I will. Obviously, they got in trouble. I hope they'll come back to me because I did.
Yeah.
Did I answer that question?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great. And I think that highlights an important point for lawyers of we are trying to do something with our practice. And a lot of times you can have a job or you can have a practice. And there are certain times where you need the job to pay the bills, but the practice is something that is a reflection of who you are and what impact you want to make on the world around you. And so to have that same culture of I hope I never see you again because that means I did my job and you did your work and things that's really important. I think that's really a key thing for lawyers to think about as they're trying to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and why they're going to do it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask you about, Brian, is your relationship with the local judges. I know that you've got a great relationship with many of the judges. I don't know if it's all of them. I'll say all of them. And you've just always had a good relationship with them. How have you been able to develop that over the years?
Yeah, so the Johnson County bench is terrific. It really is. And I would put our judges up against any other county's judges for being very scholarly and for really caring. And the relationships that I've built with the judges, and large regard, have been organic just over time, seeing them at different functions. One of our judges, for example, used to be in the same building as me. Before he became a magistrate, he was, just a regular old practicing lawyer, schlub doing the good fight of solo practice. So, we're in the same building with the guy for a number of years, and you're going to develop a friendship. And just the judges are great. I mean, I don't want to get into, how I'm friends or whatever with them outside of the courtroom. Several of the judges I certainly am. But that's so important, right? To be able to have a relationship with a judge. And I don't do it for any other reason than I like them. But, I'm popping into our circuit court judge, for example. I'll pop into his office every time I'm on the second floor of the courthouse, or most every time, just to say, hey, how are you doing? He asked about my wife and family, and I asked about his. And it's important. And I don't think that you don't get a benefit on rulings, and that's not why we do that, right? You do that because we genuinely care about each other, especially in this community, the Johnson County Bar. We just all care about each other so much. But it's important, I think, when you're building a practice, to make yourself known to the judges, because they can help you. They do have conflict work that they can give in a lot of cases. If there's a public defender who's conflicted out, they need somebody else. Hey, let's throw this young person who's trying to build a practice. Let's throw them some business. Again, we're very fortunate. I'm very fortunate, I think, to be liked by the judges. I hope, but I do. I care deeply for our judges in Johnson County. And I'll say that there's other judges throughout the state that I practiced in front of. I always try to be cordial, right? When you go into a new court, the worst possible thing that you can do is act like you're, a Mr. Know-it-all, right? I try to be very deferential to the local bar when I go into a new court. I'll wait my turn. I'm not there like, hey, I'm so busy, I gotta get out of here. I'm very important. Try to be deferential to the local bar. Those are the people that know and work with that court staff. And I ask a lot of questions of the court staff. And that's another very important issue, by the way. I don't do this for selfish reasons. I do this because I care. But I'm very friendly with court staff. And that's important because they can help you a lot. And when you can call on a court staff with an issue like, I've got a conflict and I really need to get this bumped, they can help you out with that. And court staff are gatekeepers. Playing nice with court staff, getting to know them, actually caring about them, not being, Mr. Fakes a lot, and just, I'm going to use a relationship to my benefit. I mean, people see through So you actually have to care. And if you're trying to befriend court staff for reasons that aren't genuine, I say ladies, for the most part, court staff are ladies. They see. So I genuinely care about the court staff that I work, the various court staffs that I work with on a regular basis here in Johnson County. When I go out of county, I try very hard to be kind and deferential to the lawyers, to the court staff, and try to get to know the local customers.
I think that's really important. Just getting to know the judge, getting to know the court staff really helps your life to be a lot easier when it comes to getting used to a new courtroom. And from my perspective, back in 2015, when I was looking for any and every kind of case that I possibly could, I got to become part of the public defender bar in Johnson County and do child in need of service cases. And, the judge in that court, Judge Reesner, appointed to me to a handful of them. And really that was a way that I was able to just keep the lights on, kind of similar to the work that you got left over from your prior employer. It was just a way to kind of manage things while you try to grow, your other areas of practice. Really, for me, it was going with another attorney to the judge's chambers, and she introduced me to the judge, and the judge, was very cordial and hospitable and said, "Hey, do you want to do any of these cases?" And, just that introduction kind of led the way for me to, have a path forward in law practice. So I think it's something that people should keep in mind, is just try to meet the judges, because there may be some opportunity out there that they need to fill.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. And I do. I was practicing actively in Johnson County and had been for a few years when you came on the scene, and I remember for that. And I think sort of something that you said in there, it kind of made me think, especially when you're starting out, never be above a case. Talk to people. Even though it might not be a case that you want to take, talk to you might find that it is a case that you can take or are able to assist with. But at the end of the day, that person may very well say, "Hey, I talked to a guy, he couldn't help me, but you should call him because he might be able to help you." And I know that happened when I was young and starting out in my practice. Yeah. So I mean, that's very, very important. Never be above a case. Somebody on the phone, still try to have a conversation.
That's such a great point. Never be above that case. And over time, I think you can develop, hey, frankly, I'm just too busy to handle that kind of case anymore. But then be able to offer that to another up and coming lawyer in your area, which is a really neat thing. Brian, I want to shift gears just a touch in terms of kind of the day-to-day management. Do you have any staff that help you? Do you run things all by yourself? Tell us a little bit about the operational office.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's great. I do have staff. So again, when I started out, I did everything on my own. I mean, what a luxury it is to be able to have somebody to help. And I started out, and I don't know for how long I was running things just on my own. And I decided that I needed to bring somebody on for a little help. So I had a friend of mine. His name is McLean. He was a fraternity brother, and he came on and he helped me a little bit. He was kind of in between jobs. Smart guy, really great. And I was like, do I have enough money to actually be able to afford to pay somebody to come on more of a full-time basis? So I hired a young lady. I don't even know how long it's been now. She came on, started, I think it was like 20 hours a week. And then that gradually bumped up and it became kind of a full-time job. I didn't pay worth crap. That's what it is. I didn't have the money to really spend. When I would hire, I would look for somebody that was young. I wanted to kind of get experience. She ended up leaving. She joined the military and then came back. And she ended up leaving, worked for the Attorney General's office. Not as a lawyer, but as in one of their divisions. Next young lady came in. She was really tremendous. Her name was Camille. She helped me build my practice. I mean, she really, in large part, was responsible for me being able to develop and get better as a lawyer, because I could start delegating responsibility and things like that. And then she left, went out to another business. Then I hired another young lady. She was with me for several years. She was really terrific. She actually works in the court system in Johnson County now. I'm so happy I still get to see her on a regular basis. And now I've got a young lady working for for me by the name of Sophie. She's terrific. I've been so blessed, and everybody that I've had work for me have been just tremendous. They've been tremendous, and I couldn't do a good job without them because they do so many of the things, staff does so many of the things that allow you to have free time. So I can focus on clients, right, instead of filing motions, right? Like I will review the motions, but I don't have to prepare all these motions. I just tell Sophie, I say, here's what I need. And she does it. She says, hey, it's ready for review. I take a quick peek at it, and then we get it filed. I tweak things and change things, lawyer them up, so to speak, and then get things ready to file. The phones. Holy crap! If I answered the phone myself, I would get nothing done. For one, the gatekeeper aspect of it, not everybody gets to talk to me right when they call. I might be sitting here at my desk working on something, and I'll get back to you. And I really strive to get back within 24 hours when somebody calls. Sometimes the appointments get put out the following week. Anyway, I couldn't make it without staff. And I have another young man that works for me. He's actually going to be going to law school. I'm not sure exactly where. I know he's been accepted into a couple really great law programs. University of Cincinnati, I think, is where he might end up. But he's an intern. I pay him, not enough, but I pay him. And he does a lot of things for me. He kind of organizes and gets discovery ready for my review, which is tremendous. And when you have a thriving practice, I guess, I don't really want to toot my own horn too much. I do have a very busy practice. But having somebody to be able to organize that. So I currently have 2 staff, and I couldn't make it without them. I really couldn't.
Yeah. What technology do you use, Brian?
So when I first started practicing, there was a magistrate, Judge Tandy, he was in the Johnson County Magistrate and Circuit Court, and he did a lot of small claim stuff, and it was always funny. Out on his bed, ink, a bottle with a quill pen in it. So that's the only technology that I ever would use, right? Unfortunately, in this day and age, we can't do that, right? So the everyday stuff like a computer and all of that, obviously I use all those emails, things like that. I use a practice management software by the name of Smokeball. I'm going to say that it's superior to every other product. I can't say that 100%. That's just my firm belief, and that's why I pay more for it than I could for other products. It's certainly not an inexpensive product, but that's the first one I used.
Well, I think that's really interesting that you mentioned Smokeball because, Seth and I talk all the time about Clio, and we don't really have much point of reference to anything else. And I know that I've talked to you about Clio a lot, and I tried to get you to accept my referral on Clio, and you didn't accept it. And so we've got some tension in the room that we can discuss here on the podcast. Why did you choose Smokeball over Clio?
So I chose Smokeball originally because I wanted to get something going quickly. I heard it was good. I got on. I don't know where this word came from. I find it to be a bit ridiculous, but maybe it's just the word that everybody else uses. I got onboarded, or there's onboarding. I don't. Whatever. I'm a different cat when it comes to a lot of things about word usage. But so I got with them. And then from the time I started using it, I was just like, wow, this is great. I like being able to have all of my files in one place, which, by the way, I still do use paper files. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, I think, when it comes to that. I like the redundancy, paper files, and the technology. But again, Smokeball, why did I go with that initially? I didn't go with it because it was the cheapest. I went with it because I thought it was integrated with Microsoft products better than anything else on the market that I saw. And being easy is really important. So, for example, if I want to fire off an email, I get into the person's matter and I click on a little email button and it pops up Outlook right away. I don't have to do anything. And I send the email. And then from that point on, anything that's a part of that email chain is automatically saved in the Smoke. If I get an email from somebody on a client in Outlook, on the bottom of Outlook is a blank line. And all I do is start typing the person's name, and then it pops up the list of all the people who might have those first same 3 letters or whatever the case might be, and I go and I find it, and it automatically. So it's very easy to do that. There are a number of forms that are already built in. And I'm sure a lot of practice management softwares have caught up and have offer the same thing because we become creatures of habit, right? Like when you were in school, even though there wasn't assigned seats, you went to the same seat every day. And that's kind of how smoke balls become for me. And it's not inexpensive. And I'm going to say that again. But I feel like it's a superior product. So I've been up for renewal a couple of times. Every time the renewal comes up, there's a dance, like your cable company, right? And it's like, well, I might switch. Satellite dish looks real good. Maybe unless we can work something. So I've done that dance, a few times. Each time I've looked at other products, such as Clio. There's another one out there called. Those two were the only two that I really seriously considered, other than Smokeball. But I just kept coming back to the functionality, the comfort, of course, and because I do criminal defense, so much of my work is flat fee. And I'm sure that you guys with Clio and other products have this, but one of the things that Smokeball does that's tremendous is the auto time or time finder. I don't know if your all's product does that, but if I'm working on a client X, if I'm working on their file and I go in and I type up an email and I have their matter open and I open a document, I do these things in the matter and I go to a little time find feature and hit the button. They'll say, you did this, and it'll list all the things that I did. And I say, oh, yeah. I'm sure that these other products have that, but I don't know because I've never really used them. But I find that to be a great feature. Again, the Outlook and Word integrations, those are so phenomenal with Smokeball. And I've got to say, that saves me an incredible amount of time. I know that there are, with the other products, I remember getting the sales pitch. Well, you just open it and you save it to your computer and then you import it into the practice management software, whatever that might be. But here I don't have to do that. It's all automatic through. And then I don't know a lot about it. I started using it recently, and I'm guessing everybody probably has it now because everything's AI. My goodness gracious, everything's AI. We might be out of business, fellas, before too long. The Google lawyers out there and their AIs might put us out of business, although they can't cite crap.
That's right.
Anyway, you still gotta know how to make a proper citation and know that. That case that y'all cited in that AI-driven brief was 47 years old, and it's not been good law since '82.
Yeah.
But that's developing, and I'm sure eventually the AI feature will catch up. But Smokeball, I just started using it for the first time just a couple of weeks ago. It's called Archie. It's their AI assistant, and I typed in a question in Archie, and it went through. And it sucked all the information out through all the filings, all the documents that I had uploaded, including the probable cause affidavit. And I got like a synopsis, like, this case is about this, and this might be an issue, and this is this. And I'm like, whoa, hey, maybe this AI thing isn't so bad after all. So that's a feature that they have that I've really not used enough of. But now that I found out that it might actually be terrific, I might suck up my pride a little bit and start using AI.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing to see how AI has really developed even within the law practice management software that's out there. I initially got into the AI for Clio just from the administrative tools that it offers. It can extract events out of a large number of documents that you put in there, and they can calendar events, so if you get like a case management order, you can run that through AI, and then automatically the calendar events will be extracted. Or, you can just say schedule an appointment at 12 o'clock and into the AI, and then it'll just generate the event for you. Things like that make it a lot easier. Or you just summarize a meeting that you had with like a follow-up email or a follow-up letter that you want to send to a client summarizing the consultation. And then they will come up with the email, and it just makes what would have been like a 45-minute letter that I drafted into like a 10 or 15-minute, ordeal, and just makes it a lot more efficient. And, I think we're just at the very beginning stages of AI. Attorneys are just now kind of getting comfortable with the idea of using it. And of course, with the warning that you always have the rules of
Right.
professional conduct
Right.
to comply with as you use it.
Well, yeah, and we keep hearing about lawyers that are getting their hands smacked because they did an AI brief, and then they didn't bother to check the citations. I've done some briefs and some motions recently, not leaning on AI for any of that. That comes out of Brian's old brain, and I'm proud of the work that I do without it. But I mean, I've seen some AI generated things, and it's like, wow, it's pretty good. I it's funny because we're talking about this, right? AI and all that. One of the things that I like to say is at some point when I look at my Facebook later, it's going to be flooded with AI stuff because they're listening to us. But I've been thinking about adding an AI. I don't know if a Chat GPT or Spell Book, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
These are some things that I'm looking to maybe delve into and start using. Anything that can help me give my clients better experience and better results.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key is vetting those programs that best help you serve your clients and making sure that whatever that tool is, it's one that really is beneficial to you as a practicing lawyer in the delivery of your service and hopefully the delivery of the results you're trying to achieve for your clients. And they're great tools. There's so much out there. A little overwhelming, just to try to keep your head around everything that's going on. And I think it's good that you have Smokeball or Clio or one of the practice management tools that are sort of taking that front line vetting for their customer base. They can't get that wrong or they're going to lose their customer base. And so it's good to have that sort of safeguard or guardrail in place for the lawyers who are using. And will be really interesting to see how that develops over the years and it's fun to be a part of. It's a good time to be practicing law.
Yeah, I suppose. I think I referred to myself as a bit of a dinosaur earlier when I'm carrying around paper files. I feel that way a lot. I mean, 20th year of practice. Keeping up. I mean, you got to keep up with the law. I mean, the law changes. We have the annual updates, things like that to keep up with the law. But keeping up with technology, I mean, that's something that has to happen. I admit it, I lag a little bit behind in that. Thankfully, I've got a great practice management software that kind of drags me along, so to speak. I can't imagine, whether it be any of these practice management programs, I can't imagine practice without the calendaring features, the billing features, being able to have everything in one place. You can do that. I know guys that practice that they don't have a formal practice management software. It's just things over time that they've developed. Whether it be something like OneDrive and just having files for every client. I mean, you got to be using something. You have to be using something. But my experience has been tremendous with Smokeball. I would encourage anybody that's looking at a practice management software to put that one near the top of your list. At least check out. I mean, of course, it's not for everybody, but at least put it on the checkout list because it really is tremendous. And by the way, not being paid by them or anything of that nature. I really just do. Like their programs. Because if they were sponsoring me, I'd be wearing a hat.
Yeah. That's right. No, that's what we love because we're all about getting the first-hand review and finding the tool that fits the practice. I think that's so important.
Brian, we really appreciate you coming on board here. Onboarded, I don't know.
Yeah, I onboarded with you guys today.
Yeah.
It's been tremendous. Thank you.
That's right. Podcasting, onboarding. That's what happened today with Brian also. We appreciate you coming and joining us on the podcast. If people want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you, Brian?
Yeah. Well, if anybody wanted to, what do you just give out contact information?
Yeah, website.
If anybody wanted to call me up, my office number is 317-918-7289. You can find me online. I'm trying to think what is the official name of my website. I think you can just go to alsiplaw.com or you can send me an email at alsiplaw@gmail.com. I will say one final thing. I just spoke with somebody earlier today. I know this is, kind of for maybe lawyers that are trying to build a practice. But if your thought process is, especially if you're a young person in law school, or even younger than that, it's never too early to start reaching out to lawyers to try to start building relationships. like I said, I've got an intern that was in between, I guess they call these things gap years, in between a law school and undergrad. But I've always been a guy that's very willing to at least sit down and talk to somebody. But a young person who is thinking about taking this path, one, understand out of the gate that it's tough. It'll require a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. The other thing is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody or get an email address and email them and just say, hey, would you mind just giving me 5 minutes of your time? I might want to do this as a career. And yeah, that's, I think, very important. Always have ambition.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Seth, how about you close us out with how people can find the podcast?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Brian. Really appreciate the time today. That's so beneficial to those kind of looking to launch their own practice. And we are the Lifetime Legacy Lawyers podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Lifetime Legacy Lawyers. We have that YouTube handle. We'll put all the information that we got today for Brian's contact into the show notes as well. Make sure those links are there for you. So if you have things in Johnson County you want to reach out, or just have more questions about what was talked about in terms of like smoke ball or those kind of things, feel free to reach out to us. So thanks everybody for the time today, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Thanks.
You guys, appreciate it.